I've got constituents who are in the service abroad, and there are schools called DODEA schools, Department of Defense schools, and there was an executive order applying to the Department of Defense, and they shut down the school libraries there. These are federal schools, not local schools, federal schools, and they stripped all kinds of books from there, and there have been protests throughout Europe by American families over there saying that they don't want 1984 and Handmaid's Tale to be stripped from the schools. I mentioned that actually in my opening statement. So.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a powerful breakdown for you. A 10-bullet-point summary of a congressional hearing that covered some pretty heated topics. From European hate speech laws to Meta, censorship debates, and even banned books in schools, this one has it all. Stick around, because by the end, you'll see how all these issues connect. And before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss out on future updates.
Anyway.
Mr. Chairman, may I have just one very brief point?
Of course.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to make one point about hate speech, because there's been a lot of discussion about hate speech here. And I think it's valuable for us to at least understand the basis for where these hate speech laws come from. Most of the language from the international law on hate speech, particularly in Europe, was a result of the use of propaganda to target Jews and others during the Nazi Holocaust. So quite a bit of the hate speech is actually a response to that history. And I think at least acknowledging that that is a part of the cultural freedom of expression background in Europe is useful, so that it's not just a kind of bullying of Europeans, but also an understanding of where they come from.
Yeah, but Mr. Price made the point, I think his last comments made the point about a two-tiered system, which they see versus how certain Christians get treated versus how people of a different faith get treated. And if you even use that term, two-tiered system, you can be criticized for using the term about something that many people think exists currently in the UK and in the EU. So there's been lots of comments there. I'll give the chairman, the ranking member some time, and I got maybe one last question, one last point I would like to make.
Oh, thanks. This is just for a UC request, Mr. Chairman, because you had mentioned the outreach that you'd gotten from Mark Zuckerberg, and this is an article about that Meta to pay $25 million to settle 2021 Trump lawsuit. The sentence that stuck out to me was, the president signaled that the litigation had to be resolved before Zuckerberg could be, quote, brought into the tent, one of the people said. So just want to introduce that.
Without objection?
And one other thing is just the Supreme Court decision, Murthy versus the Missouri, disproving the government's censorship claims.
Okay, without objection. I would just make one maybe final point, because it's been brought up several times, I believe. Well, I'll ask all of you. Mr. K, has President Trump banned any books in the country? Are you aware of any?
I don't know about him specifically, but I do know that, for example,
Price, you know President Trump's banned any books?
From defense libraries, books on Martin Luther King have actually been removed.
Has President Trump banned any books? I mean, my understanding of the way it works is you got a local library board, you got a local school board, and they may say certain books aren't appropriate for kids, which is frankly the argument they use in the EU on the Digital Services Act and UK on the Online Safety Act. No president's banning books. They're just saying, local library board are saying, second graders should maybe not see certain things that adults can see.
Mr. Chairman, if I could follow up on that.
Sure.
Just because I've got constituents who are in the service abroad, and there are schools called DODEA schools, Department of Defense schools, and there was an executive order applying to the Department of Defense, and they shut down the school libraries there. These are federal schools, not local schools, federal schools, and they stripped all kinds of books from there, and there have been protests throughout Europe by American families over there saying that they don't want 1984 and Handmaid's Tale to be stripped from the schools. I mentioned that actually in my opening statement. So.
I want to thank each of our witnesses for being here today. Appreciate your patience and appreciate you being here for, 5 hours. Thank you very much. And this concludes today's hearing. We thank our witnesses for appearing before the committee today. Without objection, all members will have 5 legislative days to submit additional written questions for the witnesses or additional materials for the record.
Can I say one more thing, Mr. Chairman, in praise of you?
Okay.
I might have designed it differently, but I want to thank you for organizing a very interesting trip for us and this hearing as well.
Without objection, thank you. Without objection, the hearing is adjourned.
First up, a member raised the historical roots of European hate speech laws. These laws didn't just appear out of nowhere, they trace back to the propaganda used during the Nazi Holocaust. The point was made that Europe's restrictions aren't simply about censorship but about the cultural and historical scars left behind. The conversation then shifted to concerns about what some call a two-tiered system in the UK and EU, where different religious groups feel they're treated unequally. On top of that, Mark Zuckerberg and Meta were brought into the discussion. The hearing highlighted a $25 million settlement tied to a Trump-related lawsuit, raising questions about influence and access to power. Another major highlight was the Supreme Court case Murthy v. Missouri. This case is central to ongoing debates over government censorship and free speech. Lawmakers pressed witnesses on whether President Trump has ever banned books in the U.S. The answer? No. Because book restrictions here usually come from local school boards or libraries, not from the president. But things took a twist when a lawmaker pointed out that Department of Defense schools abroad, federal schools for American families, had books removed after an executive order. Titles like 1984 and The Handmaid's Tale were stripped, sparking protests across Europe from U.S. families who didn't want these classics erased from shelves. Finally, the hearing wrapped up after nearly 5 hours with thanks to the witnesses for their patience and contributions. But the bigger picture here is clear. Free speech, censorship, and access to information remain hot-button issues, both at home and abroad. If you found this breakdown useful, make sure you smash that like button, share this video with your friends, and of course, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next big update. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.